We began with the Buffalo Bills sending a message to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I told you guys that this is what I expected to see. This was one of my OutKick six-pack. By the way, the OutKick six-pack went 4-2, even though we got totally robbed on the under because Jalen Hurts fumbled late for the Eagles and allowed the Saints to come down and score. I'm still not over that loss. It cost me the Fox Bet Live crown. We went 4-2, though. And I have been telling you for a while that I was not a believer in the Pittsburgh Steelers because they can't run the football. They've had a lot of defensive injuries. And ultimately, I thought that was going to catch up with them. And guess what? It started to catch up with them a little bit. And the Bills, I thought, went out, particularly in the second half, although the pick six at the end of the first half was obviously a monumentally big play. But Buffalo went out and dominated that second half against Pittsburgh. And now I think you have to ask the question, now that the Steelers have fallen down to the second spot, don't seem to be particularly healthy, and the way that things are going, okay, the Steelers should be able to beat the Bengals, but I expect for the Colts to beat the Steelers, and honestly, I wouldn't be stunned if the Browns beat the Steelers. So I think if you look ahead right now, you're talking potentially, not that it's going to matter in the grand scheme of things because I don't think home field advantage matters other than whether or not you get the bye. But I think there's a decent chance if you look at their schedules that the Bills are going to end up as the 2 seed in the AFC and that the Steelers will fall down to the 3 seed. And if the Steelers fall down to the 3 seed, well, does that matter in the grand scheme of things? You can maybe say no. You can maybe say it doesn't matter that much, but you would at least be in a position where you're only going to have one home playoff game. And that could matter. And I think, frankly, that if the Steelers end up in the playoffs, it wouldn't shock me if they're one and done. It really wouldn't. And I also think if you're Buffalo, you want to be in that 2-3 matchup with the Steelers because it allows you to avoid having to play against the Chiefs until the absolute last moment, which is what you're hoping for. Now, look, the Chiefs continue to kind of play at the level of competition. But they have to be, if you've been watching football at all, I mean, the Chiefs are a prohibitive favorite such that I think you can sit around and legitimately ask, hey, do you like the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl or Alabama to win the college football playoff? And we could get into a legitimate debate about that, which is crazy in the world of the NFL. But the Steelers, to me, are falling off of the wagon in a hurry here in terms of being one of the best teams in the NFL. I thought the Bills completely dominated them, and I still have questions about the Bills' defense, but I thought the Bills' defense played really, really well, particularly in the second half against the Steelers, such that the Steelers are going to have to hold on. Maybe barely they'll be there in my top 5 in the NFL when you start to look at the overall landscape. Now, other big storyline here to me was the Saints finally lost a game without Drew Brees. They'd been 8-0, and finally Taysom Hill and the Saints lost. And as a result, guess who your number 1 team is right now in the NFC? The Green Bay Packers. That bye week matters a lot when you have got a veteran quarterback, and I think that Aaron Rodgers wants it. And I also think home field advantage matters a lot when you're talking about Lambeau, even if there are no fans present. We will talk about all these games and more coming up next with Todd Furman. But first, fantasy football update. What happened with all the money at stake for the OutKick crew? A lot of you were tweeting over the weekend. We had a major fantasy football scenario playing out. And for those of you who did not hear last week, I gave everybody on the show the option. Would you rather get your regular Christmas bonus from me, or would you rather roll the dice in the high-end fantasy football league that I'm in and see whether or not you could win potentially $30,000, which is what the champion of the league gets? But you might get nothing because we have to win the inaugural game in order to get into the money round. There are 6 people in the playoffs. This was the play-in round. And if we won this round, then the guys would be in the running for $5, $10, $15, or $30,000. That's first place gets 30, second place gets 15, third place gets 10, last place, fourth place gets $5,000. And so we bring in the crew now. Everyone was obsessively following the Fantasy Football League. It came down to Sunday Night Football. Stefon Diggs went off. And Danny G, all of you are now into the money round in my Fantasy Football League. It was a huge comeback. We were down by quite a bit. We added the Washington football team. You guys know I'm usually not fantasy football guy, but when there's this much money at stake, how nervous were you watching the games on Sunday, Danny G? I'll start with you.
It is the most anxiety that I have felt in a while, and I do not know how you and Dub on a weekly basis gamble your own weekly paycheck money on sports wagering, because I can't do it. It totally drives me insane watching the games and all the different storylines where you need everything to, kind of line up like a perfect storm for you to be able to be in the money. And so, yeah, just first there was the stress and the pressure of us all setting the lineup,
which we spent a lot of time on. We had to make a decision about running backs in particular, and then that was tough in and of itself. And then ultimately we were down by a lot. I thought we were finished, and then we got a little bit lucky because they pulled Russell Wilson, although he still had an incredible fantasy day. But after his 4th touchdown pass, and it came down to Stefon Diggs, and anybody who was watching last night, that game started scoring-wise super, super slow, and then Diggs basically took over on the first drive of the third quarter and put us in the money, so we didn't have to worry about it for very long. But now the stakes are ratcheted up. You're either going to win 5, 10, 15, or $30K.
Dang. And trust me, all of us, we had several different group chats going, and we brought in the big guns when we were setting up the lineup. I mean, I was talking to Mike Harmon, who does our fantasy show on Fox Sports Radio Network. I got a hold of Dr. Chow on Sunday morning, and all of us we're looking at his input on the different injuries between DeAndre Swift and Josh Jacobs coming back. And so, yeah, man, like we not only took this serious, but it was a pretty fun few days of having a group chat with the entire OutKick show involved.
All right, let's bring in Eddie, who is the resident Steeler fan on the show. Eddie, were you conflicted at all by the fact that Stefon Diggs, you had a lot of money potentially riding on him, but also you are a Steeler fan?
Yes, I was absolutely conflicted. I was hoping that Diggs could get his points while not contributing too much to the Bills' victory, but he came out in the second half and just was on fire, and there was much rejoicing between us on Twitter. But this was fun. I have not done fantasy football in over 10 years. I was hardcore into it at one time, kind of, I guess, in the heyday of it, so to speak. But at one time I did everything: football, hockey, baseball. I was in everything, and it got to a point where it was taking so much of my life, and I just decided to quit cold turkey. So but it was going to take something special to bring me back into it. And this was definitely it. So kudos to you for including us in this. And it was really fun to have all the text going on with everybody, and giving us a chance to give our input into the lineup. And then once the game started, we're all texting each other about, this guy just scored, and oh no, they're in the red zone or whatever. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was stressful, but very, very, very enjoyable, and glad to get that win and get the money.
Dub, the place that I was the most nervous, I'm going to be honest with you, was because the Washington football team was having such a dominant defensive performance. They got 2 defensive touchdowns. But late, they started to give up a bunch of yards, and we needed, obviously, almost everything that they could bring to bear in the game. And that's where I was like, uh-oh, we're going to end up losing it by a point or two because, some late yards or something like that.
Yeah, that last play of that 49ers-Washington game, I was worried about the classic pitchy woo-woo play
Yes.
from the 49ers, and it was a decent play, but there was one side of the coin where it's like, okay, they might get some garbage yards. This could be bad for us potentially. But then on the other side, like we could be in play for another scoop and score here if one pitch goes awry. But, yeah, shout out to the Washington football team defense. And shout out for Stephon Diggs for bringing it home last night on Sunday Night Football.
So you guys now are in the money. So for people out there, like fourth place gets $5,000, third place gets 10, second place gets 15, and first place gets 30. I mean, that's pretty exciting, right? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, to know that you're in the money, a worst case scenario. This is the stressful round, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And it was a crazy roller coaster right at one point in the group chat between all of us on the show. You wrote, Russell Wilson just scored another touchdown. I think that's a wrap, you guys.
Yeah, I did.
And when you wrote that, my favorite team, the Raiders, were also about to gag that game away there in Las Vegas. And so talk about a double whammy. I got hit in the head by 2 Mike Tyson punches, and then what was it, like a half hour probably, maybe an hour swing where once the fourth quarters were wrapping up, then you suddenly texted us like, hey, wait a second, because of Washington's defense, we're on a major comeback right now, and we got to shout out Eddie Garcia because he suggested a couple of days ago to switch that defense out and put the Washington team in there, which definitely was vital in getting that W.